On That Dead Body Show, we talk about death and murder, and at times, we may use explicit language.
At 5 foot 3 inches, 103 pounds, Linda Sobek was too short for high fashion modeling. She was a former LA Raiders cheerleader, model, and aspiring actress. On the morning of November 16, 1995, she received a page for a last-minute photo shoot. She called her mom, told her about the photo shoot, that she had an audition for later that afternoon, and she would call her and let her know how it went. She changed her outgoing message, grabbed her photo shoot bag, and that was the last she was seen or heard from.
Welcome to That Dead Body Show, episode number 3, The Disappearance and Murder of Linda Sobek. I'm Douglas, and this is my co-host and wife, Brandy.
Hi, guys. That night, when she didn't call her mom to check in to tell her about her audition that she had, her mom knew something was wrong. She called her house, she spoke to her roommates, and then she got one of her phone books out and she called all of her friends. No one had heard from her.
It seems as though she had broken her own rule of not letting at least one person know where she had gone or who she was shooting with.
Her parents called the police, and they decided to print their own flyers. Over 50,000 flyers were distributed the first few days.
She had a career, and her brother knew that she wanted a family, so she wasn't going anywhere. I mean, she was about to appear on a fairly well-known sitcom at the time. And
the audition that she was supposed to be going to that afternoon was with Married with Children.
Yeah, I think she was going to be one of Kelly's bimbo friends or something, probably. That's usually the pretty girls on the show, as I recall.
Yeah.
That show. They did clear her ex-boyfriends, which included people like Lorenzo Lamas. So I'm sure he had an alibi.
Right. They cracked me up because they said he was a heartthrob in the 90s. I think
he's pretty heartthrobby still, isn't he?
I thought so, but I just thought it was kind of funny. They were like, he was a heartthrob back in the 90s.
And then news coverage started. I mean, nationwide news coverage. This aspiring actress had just disappeared.
The news coverage actually paid off, though, because with all the coverage of her face, a guy cleaning up... community service. Or, probably the same thing.
Right.
35 miles away in the Angeles National Forest.
Angeles National Forest.
Was emptying trash cans and found pictures of a hot babe.
He kept them for, the spank bank or something?
That's what
that's the first thing that came into my mind.
The Forensic Files episode said he kept them because of how nicely done they were.
Yeah, okay.
Peter Thomas just didn't want to say the nasty.
So he sees the girl on the news and gives a call, says, hey, I found these pictures while I was doing community service cleaning up trash, and the police go and arrive moments before the trash was collected, from what I understand.
Yeah.
They got there and
they
found more pictures.
A day planner and a Lexus rental agreement. And in the day planner and on the Lexus rental agreement is the name Charles Rathburn.
Which it turns out, I'm almost positive I recall that she told her mother she was going to be on a remote shoot with a photographer named Chuck.
I hate that name.
Chuck.
Meanwhile, 6 miles away in another trash can, somebody finds her photo shoot bag. It included black stockings, curlers, her makeup bag.
I think a couple of pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
Probably, a shawl, like that wispy shawl you're seeing in one of the photographs she's in.
Which we'll post.
So it turns out Charles Rathburn is a fairly famous photographer for his area of expertise. He's a staff photographer at Peterson. It's a conglomerate. They own about 30 magazines: Auto Trends, Car and Driver, I believe.
Yeah, and so he had met her in 1992, and they had done a few photo shoots. So I feel like she knew him well enough to trust him to do an off-the-cuff Photo shoot.
Especially knowing that if he didn't take the photograph, he knew the person who was taking the photograph in this car photograph business. He was pretty up there, and probably could get her some gigs. And it's big when you're up and coming like that to be working at car shows, and you would rather be doing shoots for magazines.
So at this point, 6 days into her missing, her car is found in a Denny's parking lot pretty close to her house. And Chuck calls the police.
Almost at the exact same time.
Yeah, I think while they're there, he calls in to
It's almost like he saw them and said, I better fucking do something.
Yeah, like, I need to call them and tell them.
He's like probably in there getting another cup, maybe a Grand Slam. Isn't that what they have at Denny's? The Grand Slam?
Making me fucking hungry.
Right. I don't think they have the Grand Slam anymore on your birthday.
I haven't been to a Denny's in so long, I don't know.
Denny's.
No, they do not sponsor us.
No, they don't. No, we are in no way affiliated with Denny's. Or La Quinta, which always seem to be near Denny's.
Are they owned by the same
people? I think La Quinta may be Spanish for behind Denny's.
What the fuck? Okay, so he calls them and he says, just so you know, I think I may have been the last person to see her alive. Or no, he didn't say alive. He says, the last person
I know
to see her.
you probably want to be talking to me because I'm the last person who saw her alive.
We met and I looked at her portfolio and then we went out separate ways.
I heard that they didn't even go in the Denny's, and one of the things I was investigating with, researching with, that he met her in the parking lot is what he told them, and just kind of kicked her out of the car, said, "No, I'm not interested." And the last he saw was that she was there by her white, was it a Dodge?
Yeah.
Sports car, pretty much.
Yeah, so then they're like, so you should come in and talk to us, Chuck. You should just come in and sit down and talk to us.
And he says, okay, I'll do that. And then he doesn't show up. Yeah. And he doesn't show up. And he calls them later that day and says, hey, look, I had car trouble.
And that's when he starts drinking like really heavy. And he starts writing notes to everybody, and he calls his friends, and he's like, I'm going to kill myself. So his friends go over to his house, and they're like, so Chuck, you probably shouldn't do that. And he tries to shoot himself, and he shoots his friend in the arm.
Like, damn it, man, I was just here to help.
Police take him to the station and question him. Immediately, he pretty much word vomits that on November 16th, 1995, he had been hired to shoot Alexa's prototype.
Photograph Alexa's prototype.
I just wanted to say he shot something.
Oh, okay.
He was going to have her drive in tight circles to get an action picture of the car. And according to his first version, he says that she wasn't doing it right and got her out of the car so he could demonstrate, and accidentally hit her while performing the tight circles.
And killed her.
Yeah. And he panicked. And he buried her.
And dug a grave with his hands and buried her right there, is what he said.
Was it right there, though?
Yeah. Well, he didn't specify. He said he panicked and dug a grave with his hands and buried her.
This is after they had consensual sex.
No, he didn't say that at this point.
I know, I'm just saying.
But this is version 1 of his story.
If you had consensual sex with somebody that you knew on and off for like 3 years, and you accidentally killed them...
Hey, no, we're not going there. We're married. Right? We're not doing this suppose game.
Then fuck off.
Now, is this like 3 years before we met that I knew them?
Okay. We don't even know each other. Who did? New phone, who did? And so you knew this person on and off for, 3 years.
What's she look like?
She was hot.
Oh,
Her husband thinks she's hot.
Her husband thinks she's hot.
But, you were an acquaintance. This is not just like I went and hired a hooker.
Right. This is someone
and
that,
a
business associate.
Right.
Really.
Would you not call the police?
Am I going to be held to this later on?
No.
Oh.
Unless you go kill somebody.
I plead the fifth.
Okay. I just think you would have called the police.
So, he says that he hit her and killed her.
And if he was doing tight circles in this little area, how hard could he have possibly hit her?
At which they, by this time, got
This is 7 days into her missing.
They got a warrant for the car, which was a prototype. People have said it was a rental car. It was not a rental car. It was not a rental agreement. It was really a press release for this car. For him to release. There were only two. I guess It was a prototype. There were only 2 of these cars in existence. But unfortunately, by the time they got the car, it had already been detailed at least twice.
But there was one red spot in the back seat that came back as blood.
But there was nothing on the car that said it had hit someone with enough velocity to kill them. So they looked under the car thinking maybe he just exaggerated and he ran over her. And they check under the vehicle and they don't find anything. No hair, no anything.
So this is like...
So they move to the inside of the vehicle.
Right. And then they find one
obvious drop of blood.
Which tells me that it wasn't detailed as much as they claimed it was.
Along with... Well, they probably figured, they probably didn't even get in the back. Don't do it, Tony.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Probably so.
And some of the blood even stained stitching on the leather seats. So there was some blood.
So this is 7 days into her missing, and he takes them on a wild goose chase as to where he buried her. I have 2 theories.
Which leads to nothing, and they bring him back.
Right, that time they don't find her body. And I believe this is where theory number 2, or version number 2 of his story comes in.
Is that they had consensual sex.
After she got drunk.
And came on to him.
Just magically.
No, is that may be the next version of the story.
I don't know. He told so many different ones.
Right? No. So the next version of the story, he says that he hit her but didn't kill her.
That's right. And then she was fighting him. That he pretty much knocked her for a loop, and so
and cut her face.
Yeah. But she's fighting him like she's
freaking the fuck out because that's her business. That's her livelihood, her face.
I'd also, if that wasn't my fucking job, I'd be flipping out because this bitch just hit me with a car.
Right. So, but her face is bleeding and she's flipping the fuck out.
And so she starts kicking the inside of the car, telling him she's going to get back at him for messing up her face. And so, because he's got this car on loan to take the pictures, and if he returns it damaged, he's going to be in trouble and possibly lose money.
So in the meantime, they're talking with people in the industry, people at Peterson, and they find out that this guy's like a real dick. He's like a Jekyll and Hyde. Like, one moment he'll just be taking a photo shoot, the next moment he's throwing things around the room.
And he's known for making unwanted passes at models and harassing them and, cornering them and trying to, kiss them and stuff, which has caused him to lose jobs himself.
So by this time, we're about 9 days in, and the police tell him, hey, if we find the body, it'll help corroborate what you're saying. And they take him up in a helicopter.
And one of the detectives says, you could see the helicopter land and then go back up and then land and then go back up and then land and go back up.
Well, they would land and they would search an area and they would go, no, this isn't it.
And apparently the park area is as big as Rhode Island.
Which is, so.
That's huge.
Right. And he finally leads them to the gully, which they say gully. I'm from Alabama. I don't say gully. Okay.
So here's the thing.
A ravine. They lead him to a ravine. He leads them to a ravine.
And here's the thing. Again, I think partially he was trying to hold him off. He was stalling, hoping that she would decompose. But also, I have to wonder, if you did kill somebody in any capacity, and you really were panicking, and you go and bury him, what if he didn't even know where he buried her at that point? What if partially he was stalling for them to wait for it to decompose, but the other half of that story is he really didn't know exactly where the fuck he buried her?
Right. But unfortunately, his decomposition didn't happen because
she was very well preserved.
She was buried at such a high altitude that the temperatures and the lack of sunlight in the gully, in the ravine, the lack of sunlight to the body, to the area kept it pretty well cool.
The pictures of her,
it was almost like she was refrigerated.
Yeah,
because
it's it was low humidity. They said
right, and it's like when you see her body, it's like, wow, they just found this body. This person has just died. Yeah. It's that fresh. There's a little bit of lividity near the edges and near her phalanges, toes and fingers. Yeah. But there are ligature marks on her wrists and ankles.
And her wrist was twisted.
Right. So they ask him about, all this, and he's like, and they determine her death to be by asphyxiation from neck and body decompression, which is different than asphyxiation by strangulation.
She had a hemorrhage in her lungs And in her eyes.
She had petechial hemorrhaging,
Yeah.
which, of course, strangulation.
But they said that the
attributes
lungs, though, was from him sitting on her.
Right. So of course, he's next version of his story.
Because her blood alcohol was 0.13, which was over the state's legal limit.
Almost twice, I believe, or over twice the legal limit in California.
And I just don't think she would have drank like that on her own, knowing she had that audition. I just don't think she would have got shit-faced.
Right.
Besides the fact that it was in the morning.
Especially since, that was a huge show in 95. There's one of the hubs. So now the autopsy's come back. Her blood alcohol level's high. She has on no makeup, which is really odd for a model that's on a photo shoot.
Right.
So she's been washed.
And redressed.
Because her clothes are not...
in an odd position.
They're not in normal, how you would wear clothing. Like, it looks like someone dressed her.
The pictures of it reminded me of like when a funeral director gets somebody ready for the casket and they how you wouldn't wear stuff but like I would know if somebody redressed you.
Right, because because if they didn't button the top button like Poindexter, you'd know I didn't do it.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
right.
You could tell it was just unnatural, like the zipper was all the way up and nobody does that.
So he comes up with another version of his story to cover all of this stuff. He says that before the shoot, she had been drinking
tequila,
and got a little frisky and got teasy, and then they had consensual sex
in the back seat
of the car,
and he can prove it.
Because he has pictures, and he sends his brother to get pictures, which are
he drew a map.
He drew a map, yeah, and sent his brother to get these pictures in the desert, and there's
5 rolls.
5 rolls, 4 of which are perfectly fine and show her posing, not looking very happy in a lot of the pictures. Yeah,
she looked in a couple of them, she actually looks disheveled, like she's like not digging it at all.
And we know models have that aloof look, but this
wasn't resting bitch face. This was like,
I don't want to fucking be here. Like, I had her arms crossed in one of the pictures, I believe. Just like, hello, let's get this over with. So... And the other set is pictures of a woman in partial nudity. You
couldn't see her head, hands, legs.
Nothing too
It was just a close-up on genitals. But it was double exposed.
Double exposed, and a lot of the
emulsifiers.
Emulsifiers, yes, I'm sorry.
A
lot of the emulsifiers had been worn away by weather, but not on the other 4 rolls of film. So the one that would exonerate him perfectly was damaged.
During investigation of the pictures and trying to help recreate them, they find out that not only, with the coroner's help, that it's not Linda Sobek's body, but also the steering wheel is not a Lexus, it's an Oldsmobile.
And that the lace visible on the body in the picture is not the lace that is visible on Linda Sobek. It's similar.
Right.
It's similar, but because lace repeats itself, you can just have a very small portion of it and know that this isn't right. It's like crochet. It's just in a very, very miniature form, tatting. But you can tell with just a small portion that it's not the same lace.
So police get a warrant. They find many guns in his house. And on his computer were several pages of crude jokes about models, especially blondes. So apparently...
It was crude jokes about women in general, I think. Yeah, and then about models and about blondes specifically. And he had a thing about hating a specific type of women.
And blondes. Like, it said that in everything I watched.
And I think it's women who don't submit to my advances. I hate them.
Creeper.
Right? Yeah, creeper.
Right. He is eventually formally arrested and charged with first-degree murder and sodomy with a foreign object. Which, in one of the documentaries I watched, the scientist flat out says that she tested the gun, the breech-facing part of the gun. I've got no fucking clue what that means. So if anybody is a gun person, let us know what the breech-facing surface is.
That's the backside, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, a brake breech is a shotgun that the backside breaks open. So that would be the backside of the gun.
Either way, he stuck it in her ass. So,
No, sodomy doesn't have to be anal, I don't believe. I believe in Alabama, sodomy is anything other than missionary, so... Okay.
Okay.
Okay, nevertheless, we digest.
Who's hungry?
We digress. He comes up with a story to fit this scenario. He was on top of her, crushed her, pulled her out to do CPR because she wasn't breathing. Couldn't get the body back in the car. To make it easier to get the body back in the car, he duct taped the legs together, and that's how the ligature. I mean, he had something for. He had something for every piece of evidence.
Yeah, he did have answers for everything.
I mean, that makes you look guilty because I mean, no innocent person has something that covers every piece of evidence. I mean, to me, I mean, if you do, it looks suspicious.
So during the trial, the defense has the actual audacity to put his brother on the stand, and he confesses that, yes, I destroyed the map that Chuck drew me to get to these pictures, and yes, I developed them myself and screwed them up. However, he was not charged with anything because once he developed them, he didn't give them to the police. He gave them to Charles Rathbun's
lawyer.
His
defense attorney.
Yeah. So I think he should have been charged with obstruction of justice, hindering prosecution, something. Fuck. I mean, there's got to be something.
Destruction of evidence.
Well, that too. Yeah.
On December 16th, 1996, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and sits there to this day, I believe.
I hope so.
But he's not dead yet, so.
It was also looked at that 2 years before Linda's murder and found between 2 and 6 miles away from her body was another model that went missing, Kimberly, say it.
Pendelios.
She went missing also after meeting an unknown photographer at the same Denny's, and her skeletal remains were found not too far from Linda. So
in the Anglos, whatever.
In the Angeles National Forest. So when I was watching the original forensic files on this, nobody had been arrested. Charles Rathbun hadn't. He was a suspect, but he had not been found guilty or even charged. More recently, in 2004, David Rademacher was convicted, and Charles Rathbun was
exonerated. Was cleared.
But I mean, what are the odds?
Right.
Unless he got the idea from that.
Maybe he knew the guy.
Maybe they were in on it together. Even the first one. Right. I mean, I just find that's really odd that it was 2 blonde models. Both met an unknown photographer at Denny's, and they both ended up dead that close together. So either this poor David guy got the shaft, and he didn't do it.
You damn right, baby.
Jesus Christ. I don't know. I just think that's weird. Anyway, I guess that's another one in the body bag.
Until the next show next week, if you're looking for some other true crime to listen to, check out our girls Erin and Stacy over at the I Said Goddamn podcast. See ya.
Bye, guys.